Hi everyone, my name is Nitya and you are at Daybreak Stitchery, which is my Flosstube channel. This is a channel all about cross stitch, and if you're like me, you love cross stitch, talking about cross stitch, looking at cross stitch. So that's what we're going to do with one crochet item today. So this is the end of the month, so this is usually when I just check in and show you what I've been working on this month. It's been a really great stitchy month. I have tons to show you, so we're just going to get right into it. Okay, so first thing I want to do is real quick, I want to announce the giveaway winners from 2 videos ago. So last month in December, I did my end of the month video was a whip parade. I'm forgetting all our cross stitch terms. It was a whip parade, so I didn't announce the winners from the November giveaways, so here they are. Okay, so I was giving away 3 patterns from Mama Witch Cross Stitch on Etsy, and the first one is called The Good Hunt, and it's a really cute pattern with frogs. I'll be putting pictures up here. So that one goes to Ale, Doneja Ale, Alejandra. So congratulations. I'm going to send you today when I'm editing this video, I will be sending out the files to the winners for today. Okay, the next one was called Magic Feeling, and it was a very cute one with foxes and some wintry motifs there. And that one goes to Mrs. Bobbin Lacer. Congratulations. And then the third one is that very cute Santa with the big eyes. And that one goes to Christina Caldwell Smith. Congratulations. So I will be sending those out this afternoon. If you haven't heard from me by tomorrow, by Sunday, let me know because I should be able to send everything out by then. Okay, so next I want to show you some stitchy kindness that I got in November and December that I haven't shown you yet. So one is just about one of the cutest things. It's from Stephanie, who's stitching it to 24/7. And this was a fun surprise. And are you ready for this? Look at this cute thing. Stay and stitch, stay safe and stitch at home. And look at her cute finishing she did. So it's got fabric on the back and it's on like a little stake. And I keep it in my front window, front porch window, so everybody passing by can see it. So they know clearly they know what's going on in my house, but it's just so, so cute. And I didn't write down Stephanie in her latest video. She did talk about like what the pattern is and um, what colors she used. It's a really beautiful variegated green. It's not quite showing up true to color on the video. You're seeing more of a kind of like a darker olive green sort of, but it's a much more springy, it's got a brighter tone to it. So really, really pretty. I love the finish. I have no idea how she did it, but it's just the cutest thing. So that was fun to get in the mail. And then my stitchy friend Sarah and I sent each other a couple things for the holidays, and I gotta show you, she sent me a really lovely project bag. This is Sarah at Modcross, who's Sarah, I didn't ask you for permission. I'm going to do this, and I hope you're not upset about it. I'm going to see if I can put in a picture of something that Sarah put on Instagram recently. So she's stitching a model stitch of one of her patterns. It's this marigold pattern that I just love. It's so, so beautiful. And she's stitching it on this beautiful sage green fabric. It looks so good. It just like made my breath stop when I looked at it on Instagram. It's so, so pretty. So I'm going to put a picture in here. But she's Mod Cross, and you can find her on Etsy, and she's got more flower motifs coming too, which I cannot wait for. But so Sarah sent me a really lovely project bag, but the thing that I love the most is she sent me a floss of one of her favorite colors, and this is Gentle Art Cinders. Just look at this color. It goes from magenta to deep, 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 deep burgundy, like purpley, maroony kind of burgundy. It is so pretty. And the second you look at it, you just want to stitch everything in it. So thanks, Stephanie, and thanks, Sarah. These are just so, I love them. I love everything. I love all this stuff. So I just can't stop staring at this color. It's so pretty. This would be beautiful for some kind of monochromatic piece. The variegation in this, it's so lovely. So I did actually get one more item, but I'm going to mention that in a little bit. Okay, I think I want to show you my FFOs. I have two FFOs to show you, so let me just grab those real quick and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so I've got two FFOs to show you, believe it or not. Um, let's just start with this first one. I love it so much. I think you will too. Check that out. So the pattern is Autumn Quakers. It's by ByGone Stitches, and ByGone Stitches really does have some beautiful Quaker patterns. This pattern, it's stitched on, let me think, it's a 36 count Witch's Brew by XJU Design. Gorgeous, gorgeous, like gray, purpley fabric. I don't know if you'll see, maybe you're kind of seeing the color there a little bit. And then all the threads are Threadworks. So let me see if I can remember the colors. This is Desert Sunrise, which you'll see again, I'm stitching something else with it. Peacock Feathers, Shanghai Nights. The center here is Pottery. That's beautiful. That pottery is just gorgeous, isn't it? It's like shimmery almost, but it's not. But the variegation in it kind of gives that effect. I'm missing one. Oh, the animals are stitched in marooned, like the squirrel and that cat and this turkey down here. So I really love it. And this frame, let's talk about the frame. So the frame is from the Rusty Roof on Etsy. And I picked up this frame at the same time that I picked up the frame that I used for my sister's holiday stitch that I did last month. I wanted to get a nicer, usually I do thrift store, like my next FFO is a thrift store frame. That's what I usually finish with. But I wanted to get something really nice to put her holiday gift stitching in. And at the same time, I noticed that the Rusty Roof on Etsy, they basically do like, they do kind of very basic wood frames, and then you can pick a paint. They have like a inventory of like 24 different colors of paint. So you can pick what color of paint you want the frame painted, and then they can get it to you. So they have like, I don't think they do made to order. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they have like certain sizes that they just make ready to, ready to ship. And so they had some odd sizes though, like they had 6x9 frames, which I never really see around. And so when I saw that, I thought, oh, I better go check all my finishes, my finished projects, and just see if I have something that would fit in a 6x9 frame, because maybe I'll just splurge and get it. And sure enough, when I measured this one out, it fit the stitched size was exactly like a couple of millimeters short of 6x9. And I had really been wanting to try to think of a way to finish this where I could get really close to the edge of the stitching like this. That was my intention to do that anyway, so it just worked out perfectly. And I wanted kind of an orangey frame like this, an orangey red, like a brick red, to go with the oranges that are in here too, the autumn colors. So I think it's perfect. I love it. And sorry, I'm going to turn off. I have my Discord on. I'm going to turn it off. Okay. So, yeah, it turned out great. They have different types of like finishes for their frames. So, like, I chose this one, but they have others too. And you can follow them on Instagram too. They just did a post where they had pictures of some of their red frames, if in case you're looking for red frames for like Valentine's finishes. So I just love it. I think it turned out great. It's going on the wall. It's ready to go. Yay. A rare FFO. It's been a long time since I've FFO'd something. Well, besides my gift stitching. Okay, I have another FFO to show you. And this one let me just show it to you. So, it's been a while since you've seen this one. This is Henna Mandala by Ink Circles. And let me think for a minute. It's on an 18 count Ada. And I want to say it's dill. It's Picture This Plus for sure. I think it's dill, which is one of the discontinued colors from last year. And it's really pretty. It's a pretty kind of yellowy color with like gentle green undertones in it. And the floss is Silks for You, one of my favorite colors. It's PR068, which is basically a variegated black to red, but the black parts, even like some of the black is already transitioning to red. It's got some red in it, so it has sort of like a black cherry kind of feel to it. Really, really pretty. And this is a thrift store frame here. And I like to call this one my FFFO, which means finally finished object, finally fully finished object. I got that from watching, over the holidays, I had been watching Lisa, who is Creaky Geekery on Flosstube. Do you watch her? She is so fun. Her videos are so upbeat. She's got beautiful stitching. She's really fun. She's into like sci-fi and fantasy kind of stuff too, so that's fun to hear about. And we watched Steve and I over the no, it wasn't over break. It was over one of these over MLK weekend, I think. We were watching movies and we watched the Hobbit movies. We had never seen them before, so we finally sat down and watched them. And like the first person I thought of to message was Lisa from that. But anyway, she said this funny thing in one of her videos. She calls them her FFFOs, her finally fully finished objects. So that's what this is. And oh, Lisa was the other person who very sweetly sent me something as some stitchy kindness because I had been watching her video. I'd been binging her videos over winter break, and in one of them, she's out in the Pacific Northwest, and she had talked about going to Acorns and Threads. Is that the LNS that's out there? And she had done that retreat. There was a retreat not too long ago with Tracy Horner from Ink Circles, and then the gal from Hands On Design, and who was the third one? Summerhouse Stitchworks. And they had come up with these, like the pattern they had given away at that retreat was these round things, little motifs. And I looked at that and after watching the video, I try to leave comments on everybody's floss tubes. And so I had said, oh, I love your video. And yeah, I got to put that one on my list. If I ever order anything from Acorns and Threads, I got to make sure to put that on my list. And she's like, oh, I'm not going to stitch it. I'll just send it to you. So she did. So that was real sweet of her. So that was my third stitchy kindness from past couple of months. But anyway, so I put this in a thrift store frame and I have learned my lesson, although I will be paying for my actions for some time now. I need to be more careful with leaving enough space around my stitching for finishing. I am really, really bad about, like, I'll pick the right size fabric. That's not the problem because I use the cross stitch calculator from Yarn Tree. So I always have the right size fabric and I always leave like 4 inches of margins when I do that calculation. So that's not the problem. The problem is once I sit down to start stitching a piece, I'll look at that fabric and I'll tell it's pure stinginess with my fabric. Because I'll say, ooh, if I just squish the pattern up into the corner and just leave like an inch or an inch and a half, look at all this leftover fabric I could keep for like stitching smalls or bookmarks or something like that. Well, it really came to bite me on this one because so basically on two sides, I only had about an inch for finishing. And then on the other sides, I had all the leftover fabric, so I'd stitched it in the top left corner of the fabric. Well, if you use thrift store frames like me, you just never know, like you're not going to get a perfectly measured size frame, right, to fit your stitching. Your stitching just has to work with whatever frame size you get, and you have to be able to center your piece, and I couldn't properly center this. If you're looking really carefully, you can see, like, see how there's more fabric here than there is up here? There wasn't enough fabric left for me to properly center this. So it's going to continue to be a problem for a number of pieces because I've already started so many pieces that are not properly centered, where there's no excuse for this because I have plenty of fabric. I've built up a stash, so there's no reason for me to be stingy about fabrics, and I need to be more careful. So basically, like, I'm about to show you my whips. 2 of my 3 whips have margins that are like this. I've stitched really close to the edge. So it's just a habit I need to break. This taught me my lesson. So I'll just be better about it. I mean, in the end, it doesn't look terrible. I personally really don't care that much. But I don't want to get into a situation where I can't frame a piece because I've just made it too awkwardly set. The edge is too awkwardly sized. So luckily, this one just happened. I could really stretch those short edges and make them fit, but I don't want to have to do that on every piece. So Anyway, that was fun. They have a couple of finishes now. Those are going to go up on the wall. I'm going to try to put a picture here of what the wall's looking like upstairs because I had been, or maybe I've shown you this already. I don't remember, but um, I started with, we have a lot of wall space in the living room, and so I started with just the shortest wall, and I started putting some of my pieces there and some of Steve's photos there, kind of collaging them. So I'm just kind of it's not finished. We're just going to keep adding to it, and these will go up there. And then Steve's picking out a couple more of his photos to get framed up there too. So those were my cross stitch FFOs. And then really quick, I'm going to talk for only 1 minute on this. I had been crocheting baby blankets for two of my colleagues at work. They're both having babies in March. We had to have their shower at work a little bit early because one of them's going to go early, we think. So I've been scrambling the past couple weekends to finish their blankets, but I'll put in a picture here to show you what it looks like. They turned out actually really, really nice. They're really cute. The stitch is so easy. It's basically all single crochet. That's it. It is literally all single crochet, which is like the first stitch that you learn when you do crochet. So the actual stitching is super easy. It just takes a little while because it's a blanket size, you know. If you're a quick crocheter, you could probably do it in a weekend. It took me a few weekends. Um, they really loved them. It got a lot of oohs and ahs, and it looks really good. It's from a pattern from Ella Marie Home, so I'll put the names of I usually like list everything down in the description below if there's anything you want to get yourself and try yourself. That blanket, the stitch is so easy on it that even if you're not a crocheter, you could watch a video on how to crochet and then start making that blanket. It is so, so easy. And the key to that one is that I used a chunky yarn, a chunky baby yarn. So it was really, really soft. And I used an enormous hook. It was a size N hook. So basically, on every row that I was doing, I was almost at an inch already. So it works up faster than if you use a thinner yarn, a skinnier yarn. So, and it's washable yarn, which is nice too for, new moms don't want to have to deal with dry cleaning and things like that. Okay, so I am going to just set these aside here and then I'm going to be right back with some whips to show you. Okay, be right back. All right, so I have 3 whips to show you. You're going to be very proud of me because if you know me, you know that I have a very hard time being a monogamous stitcher. I stitch like probably every 2 or 3 days. I like to change up what I'm stitching. So in a month, I usually stitch all different kinds of stuff. And I cannot even look you in the face right now when I tell you that I do have some new starts from this month. We're going to talk about that later. But I do have 3 whips, and one of them I got as close to monogamous stitching as I could be. I probably stitch about 15 days worth on that one. But anyway, let me show you all 3. Okay, so this first one, I probably spent a couple weekend days on this. This is, you're going to recognize it. This is the Modern Folk Embroidery 2021 Stitch Along, the Fruit of Plenty. I call it Fruits of Plenty. I thought I saw it listed that way. Check that margin, by the way. That pitiful, pitiful, look at that, 1 inch. This is going to be a tough one to frame. Anyway, I call it Fruits of Plenty. And I know a lot of people have been finishing this one. Because the last installment came out in December. So I basically have restarted so many times. And even right down to you, if you saw my whip parade, I was struck. Oh, well, so let me finish the sentence. I was struggling with the blue because the more I looked at the blue, it's really pretty blue, right? It's Caribbean Bay, DMC color variations, but it does not have a good contrast with the fabrics. And the fabric, I won't really share much about it because it's a brand I don't use anymore. But the blue is Caribbean Blue DMC. The orange is that same orange that was in my FFO that you saw earlier, the Threadworks Desert Sunset. Well, see how in the blue, like you're not able to see the contrast. Let me find a good section. I'll show you. Hang on a sec. Okay. So like down here, where the negative stitching is happening, right? You're stitching around the motifs so that the fabric reveals the motif. Well, there's not much of a contrast. See how you can barely see really what the motif looks like? You can kind of just get a trace of it. So that had been bothering me. And thank you so much, because a couple people, Matt, MBC Stitcher, and a couple other people had emailed me just some ideas for like, could you do this? Could you do this? And finally, what I settled on was I follow the hashtag on Instagram. It's hashtag MFESal2021. And so I'd been staring and staring and staring, looking and looking, following what people have been doing on that hashtag, looking at everybody's finishes. And I was really drawn to the monochromatic versions of it. So I thought, well, let me just try it. Like, I do like that desert sunset. So let me just try that with that color and see how it turns out. And I do like how that's going. See how you can definitely see the motifs poking out with that desert sunset. So that's when I decided that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stitch just with one color. I'm going to pull out the blue eventually and just stick to this one color. I already started pulling out the blue actually for some of it. So this right here is what it'll look like. And this, what I'm showing you here, is what I did this month. So it stitches up much more quickly. This is an 18 count Aida, and I'm using 2 strands, and it's stitching up really, really fast. There's a lot of fill-in stitching with all that negative stitching, but it doesn't bother me. It just looks, I think it looks so pretty. It's coming along really pretty. So it's a variegated, that desert sunset is a variegated orange to brown. That's what you're seeing there, dark orange going into brown. So I love that one. And the inspiration on how to do this actually came from, let me tell you, Cross Stitch Spells on Instagram. It's Ilona is her name. I was looking at her version. She has done this, but with, I think it's with the DMC 115. You know that beautiful DMC 115? That's like the variegated red. She is one of the few people who has done a monochromatic version of this that also includes the negative stitching. And what I mean is, so when you get the pattern for Fruits of Plenty, Jacob actually suggests a monochromatic version of this, but what he suggests to people is to avoid the negative stitching and to use your one color to just stitch the motifs. So like, for example, this flower here, instead of stitching around it, just go ahead and stitch the flower. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep the negative stitching because I feel like that's the big strength of this pattern, those big bands of all that negative stitching. So what I needed is to see, like, is there someone who could pull off keeping it a monochromatic color, but also including all that negative stitching? So Ilona, who again is Cross Stitch Spells on Instagram, she did it with her DMC, I think was DMC 115. So I'm just basically following how she did hers. So I really, really like it. I think we finally got a winner with how to handle this project. So I'm going to keep coming back to this and kind of chip away at it. So like this, where are we here? This part here. This part, all this is April. It's going into the May section right here, and then it'll finish with a June right here. So if I can do a little bit more work on April and May this month, or in February, I'll feel pretty happy about that. So that's coming along. Is there anything else I wanted to tell you about this? No, that's about it. Yeah, I like that one. I'll show you one more. Hang on. I don't know if I showed you close. Yeah, I think I did. You've seen plenty of looks at this. But see how much better that looks? Like you can see all the motifs now. I needed a good contrast between fabric and thread. Okay, so you are going to be very proud of me on my next one. So the next 2 pieces I'm going to show you were from my wipgo. So I've been keeping up with wipgo. I met both my wipgo goals for this month, but they're really easy. I set my goals very easy. Basically, all of my goals are the same stitch goal, just with 5 different projects. It was to pick it up for 5 days. Like whatever project was called, make sure to pick it up and stitch on it for 5 days. So let me show you what this one is. The first one is Ink Circles, Forests of Sumatra. Here's what the full pattern looks like. And you see a couple of squirrels right here, a couple of big squirrels right there. And then lots of pretty it's a really pretty borders pattern. Lots of different interesting borders. So here's where I am with this. Move it up a little bit closer so you can see. It's coming along great. I got one squirrel. Let me close up a little bit more. I don't know if you can see the one guy there. There's one squirrel, and then the other one hasn't come in yet. He's right over here. So I made it across, so I'll show you everything. So like what I had before I started wipgo was basically just like this top corner here, barely anything. For the 5 days of stitching, I had made it to about this point, like actually maybe right here. That's the page finish right here. And then the end of the month, I just kept coming back to this. I kept picking it up because basically it's on an 18 count 8. Look, check that margin again. Look at what I'm doing to myself. This is going to be a hard one to frame. And this is a weird size because it's like a very wide rectangle. It'll be a tough one to frame, and I haven't helped myself with all this. Look at all this edge, and I could have properly centered it. Okay, so since the goal was 5 days of stitching, what I said to myself was, okay, what I think I'll do is I'll keep my wipgo stitching Monday through Friday. So in the evenings, basically, I would stitch on this. So I met my goal. Basically, if I was stitching Monday through Friday, the first Monday through Friday, like the first week of January, I had met my goal on this. But because it's 18 count Aida, which I find the easiest to stitch on, it's the easiest fabric for me to stitch on. And because this is, the thread is sulky, it's 40-44. It's called butterscotch. Isn't that a pretty contrast? Because sulky is one strand, and it's on the 18 count Aida, it just stitches up so fast. So it's very satisfying because even an evening when I only have like a half hour of stitching, like in a half hour, I could do like one little flourish, for example. So it just feels like you're chipping away at chunks of this, even if you don't have a lot of stitching on an evening. So I just kept coming back probably for 3 weeks, 3 Mondays through Fridays, I'm pretty sure. I kept picking this one up. So I love that. I'm going to keep coming back to it. This point here, let me hold it up probably right here, like the bottom of these plants, that's a third of the way down. So I've got quite a bit more to do. Like this edge that I'm coming down right here, I'm not quite at the 2/3 mark yet. There's still a little ways to go. So there's more to be done on it, which is fine. I'm chipping away and I'm making progress, which is good. And it's been called again next month, so I can keep working on it. I actually was so excited about that when I saw that the new numbers were out, and I guess I was really, really hoping, please let this come back again because now I'm on such a roll with it. I want to keep going. So this dreamy fabric, I don't remember if I told you what it was. It's Picture This Plus. It's 18 count Mystic. It's a fantastic fabric. It is so, so dark and pretty. It's not too hard to stitch on in terms of, you know how stitching on dark fabric can be kind of challenging sometimes, like charcoal fabrics or even black fabrics. I find that tricky personally. This isn't tricky, although there is a funny thing that happens sometimes. Occasionally, I will put the needle instead of into the top left corner. Sometimes I miss it and go directly below there. And you can tell right away, like within a couple of stitches after that, you can see right away because it doesn't make a perfect X. It's kind of like askew a little bit. So I don't know why I don't usually do that. It only happens on this fabric. Which is odd because otherwise it's very easy to stitch on. And just think of all the different colors that would show up great on this fabric. Like basically any pale colors, anything white. There's a sulky thread. I have some sulkies that are going to arrive today. Oh, because my ideas are going to be all over the place today. I apologize. Everything is going to remind me of something else today. So Jacob Modern Folk Embroidery has that new pattern, the heart. It's Isabella's heart, and it's got like a white, a pink, and a red in it. And I saw that and I thought, I want to do that in sulky because now that I know that it's so great on 18 count and it works up so great. So I actually picked up some sulkies that I would just want to look at. I want to do some color study of some sulkies. And they have a beautiful white one. It's called Parchment, and it's a variegated white to off-white. It looks really pretty. I'm curious to see what it looks like in person because the photos are really nice. So anyway, let's just try to, I can't stop talking about other stuff I want to stitch. But this one I'm really happy with. It's coming along great. This Mystic, I love it. I love how the sulky's working up, and I'm excited to keep going on it too, and to keep showing you progress on it too. Okay, so that was Squirrels of Sumatra by Ink Circles. All right, the last whip I'm going to show you is my other wipgo project, and it's the Bookcase by Galliana Designs, and I'm going to have to see if I can stick a picture in here for that one because I don't have I have a printed out picture. I don't know where it is. But anyway, here's how far I got in that one. And this is looking pretty nice too. This is a gorgeous, it's a beautiful pattern. So it's a monochromatic pattern of a bookcase. And so you'll see books and other kind of odds and ends like picture frame, lamps and candles, that vase with flowers, and then like beautiful woodwork too on the bookcase itself. It's really, really pretty. So basically I had done, let me think. Before I started it this month, I had done this panel. This is like there's two wooden panels that go through the middle of the bookcase. So that's this. And then this vase right here. That's what I had done before, like before I had started for wipgo. So I added this kind of lamp thing and then these books. And then I added these little items. There's like a plaque here with the saying that says Home Sweet Home. And then there's a picture frame that's going to come in here. So a little bit of the frame. This is on 20 count Onyx by Color and Cotton, which is, you all know I love Color and Cotton. Picture This Plus and Color and Cotton are kind of like my go-tos for fabric. I love them. I stitch on other things too, but I find myself returning to them all the time. And then the thread is DMC 4065. It's a color variations. Let me see if I can get in a little closer. It's a color variations and it's called Morning Meadow. It's really, really pretty. It's very subtle. It's like a beige, a pale blue, and a pale green variegating. And while I love this pattern, I didn't find myself going back to it after I had stitched my Monday through Friday, my 5 days. And I know why it is. It's because, so it's a monochromatic pattern. So when you look at the symbols on the chart, you could basically, like, for example, there are some books that are upright here and then some books that are laying down, right? So like take this section in here. Really, because it's a monochromatic pattern, if I had stitched with a solid color that wasn't variegated, I would just be stitching like I wouldn't be stitching motif by motif. I would just be stitching chunks, right? Like I would stitch this whole patch, you know, these together. I wouldn't be distinguishing between motifs. But because I'm using a variegated thread, part of me was thinking, if I have a stretch of thread and I'm putting stitches in, will it create some kind of, will it be off visually if I'm stitching into multiple motifs with that one thread? Do you know what I'm saying? I found myself needing to stitch one motif completely and then do another motif completely, get that variegation through on just one motif, and then stitch another motif completely and then another one. Which isn't hard to do, but because that pattern is monochromatic, it requires you to just pay a little extra attention to the pattern. Like I had to keep like kind of checking and rechecking, like, wait, does that line of stitches go with this book or with this book? Does this line go with that book or this book? So you're just kind of checking and rechecking the pattern a lot, if that makes sense, to make sure that you're really on the motif. The stitches that I'm doing are on the motif that I'm stitching, if that makes sense. I mean, when the whole thing is done and when you look at it, you're like, I don't think anyone will be able to tell really, you know, that each motif is stitched separately, but it was just something that like I couldn't get out of my head. Like what if the what ifs, you know, what if you put all these stitches in and then in the end you can't distinguish the motifs because of all the way the colors are going? So that's what's been kind of slowing me down a tiny bit on that. This one didn't get called again for next month, so I'll be putting it away for a little bit until it gets called up again. But it is it is really pretty, right? It's kind of amazing what she's been able to do. I mean, it's amazing that in a monochromatic pattern where the motifs are touching like that, that you can still tell what the motifs are. I guess it's just from the like this also has some negative stitching around it, right? Because you're leaving the designs and the book spines unstitched, and maybe that's all it takes to create the impression of each motif. I don't know, it's very clever. I like that pattern a lot. So that again was the Bookcase by Galliana Designs, and it's on a 20 count Aida. And did I say it's yeah, I told you it's the color variations, and I'm using just one strand. Actually, I'll show you one more time. Usually on 20 count Aida, on a lot of I don't use that much, but on the fabrics I've been using for other projects, I've had to use two strands. And on this one strand works just fine. I suspect it's because the fabric is dyed so dark that it probably shrunk a bit. So it's really probably like a 21 count or maybe even a 22 count, really. So one strand works on that one. All right, so I'm going to set those aside and then I'm going to be right back. I do have some new starts to show you. So let me grab those and I'll be right back. All right, so yes, I have new starts to show you. Let's just go into it already. Well, one of them is a sale that I started. So this one's legit, I think. I meant to start this one. So this is, I'm starting, or I have started a stitch along for a pattern called Kain Kapal, which is an Indonesian ship cloth. So this is the Kain Kapal Sal, and the pattern is by Java Cross Stitch on Etsy. And I'll put the information below in case you want to, stitch along, start along, whatever you want to do with it. If you like the pattern, you want to join us. It's never too late. So what we're doing with this is we're stitching just one part of the pattern every month because if you're like me and not a monogamous stitcher and you have other things you want to stitch, one piece feels like a manageable bit that we can kind of chip away at each month. And then by December, we'll have a beautiful finished piece. So this was fun. We did the top border for January. And so this is what it looks like. Very, very pretty. And check that out at the top. I don't know how close I can get here, but this the very top motif here involves some fractional stitches. They're 3/4 stitches, which actually are not that scary when there are not that many and when they're in a very even like geometric pattern like this, a repetitive pattern. They're actually not too bad to do. This is a 36 count linen. It's brown sugar. I think I switched. I had picked a picture of this plus, but I think it's fiber on a whim, brown sugar. And this is as wide as the pattern will get right there. And I'm using a DMC, I think it's 3750, this first color. And I'm using two strands. And if you look too closely, I started in the center. My first motif with the 3/4 stitches is like a shambles, basically. It looks terrible, but the more I repeated that stitch, the better it got. So most of the other stitches are very even. It's just, you can tell the very first one is a little off. I did not so I don't know how close my camera will let me get. It's not very clear, but basically, so there's that top motif that has the fractional stitches. It basically looks like it's two triangles and then, let me look at it. Two stitches and then two more triangles. So it's got four 3/4 stitches in it, in each repeat of it. And then underneath there's two lines of back stitching and then some more cross stitches and then there's a line of back stitching here. All that back stitching, I kept it the same two strands that I used for everything else. I just went ahead and did the back stitching in that too because I didn't want to have to rethread with one strand and then go back through and just do like there's just two stitches of back stitching in each of that. So I've just kept it as two strands. So this worked up so fast, maybe a couple hours, like 2 or 3 hours maybe. And Looks really pretty. I can't wait to do the next bit of board. So the February piece comes in here, and it's another line of border, and it has some red motifs in it. That's going to be exciting to do. The repetitiveness is really nice. I like that. That's what I like about the squirrels of Sumatra pattern too. Um, some of the motifs you get so used to stitching the repeat. Like, do I still have it here? Like this edge, for example, this motif that's on this edge here. It looks kind of challenging, but after I stitched 2 of them, I just knew what to do. You just learn it, you know, you don't even have to look at the other ones or the pattern for reference. It just becomes so easy to do, and I like that, the repetitiveness of that, because 'cause we're usually, um, watching Jeopardy. We've been watching a lot of Jeopardy or, you know, we're watching things and listening to things while I'm stitching, so it's nice to have, repeat patterns that have repeats like that. Um, speaking of, like, trivia and game shows, there's a so this is going to take us out on a tangent a bit, but so there's a game show in the UK called, let me think, Countdown. It's called Countdown, and I think you can watch episodes on YouTube. There's a version that comedians do, like a play on it. But anyway, Countdown is a show where they do like word jumbles, and then they also do like these math games. So like one of the math games is, um, they'll pick a number. Let's say it's like 378. And then they'll give you 5 or 6 numbers, and you have to try to use those 5 or 6 numbers to calculate the target, the random target number. And on that show, they are always using their 15 times tables. Like they multiply things by 15 all the time and they just know it. And I find that so interesting because we never we only went to 12 with times tables. When I talked to my mom and my uncles, my dad too, they went farther. In India, when they went to where they went to school, they would learn more of the times tables. So I've always kind of personally wanted to learn the 15's times tables because I want to get better at that game. But then I was thinking, oh, I should also learn the 18 times tables because that will help me with fabric calculations because I'm terrible. Like I always run to that cross stitch calculator and I want to be able to do it in my head. I'm not very good at doing math in my head. I always have to write it down. Um, but if I learn the 18 times tables and I know, like if I look at a pattern and I know how many stitches across it is, that I could figure out how many inches roughly it's going to be and just calculate it myself. So I'm putting that on my list of things to do in 2022, get my 15 and my 18 times tables memorized. Because even though I calculated it on cross stitch calculator, when I stitched this up, I was shocked at how small it is. Like this is barely, what is this? Probably like 8 inches, less than 8 inches. I was expecting it to be enormous, but and it said it was, what was the stitch count? It's 123 stitches. So basically, I want to get better at doing math in my head, and I think learning some more multiplication tables is going to help me with that. Okay. Do I have anything else I want to tell you about that? Nope. That's it. We're going to do January pretty soon, or no, February, the next month, the next border pretty soon. I'm pretty excited about that. Okay, next new start is I decided to do another holiday gift stitching for my sister. And I know there's a risk at this because I don't know if she will want any more stitching. Like I think she really loved the snowman family. Um, but it's kind of one of those I can't get a good read on whether she would want more stitching from me or whether she would have the reaction of like, oh no, she's going to give me all her stitching, you know, that kind of thing. But I love this pattern so much that even if she doesn't want it, I will find someone else to like it or or I'll keep it or you know, I will enjoy stitching this. So I saw it right away and I thought, yes, I want this to be my next gift stitching. It's the new Shannon Christine pattern. It's called, what is it called? Falling Snow. And I love the Quakeriness of it. Like those snowflake motifs kind of remind me of the loose motif, like the separate motifs in Quaker patterns. So I just thought this might be something she would appreciate maybe. And if she doesn't, want it, then I would love it. So, the called for colors are a white, and then all these, like the trees, the reindeer, like these birds, these little ornaments that are hanging down, those are actually in teal colors. It's like the, the 38, is it 3808 or 3810 DMC? It's those colors. So I was looking at it and I thought, well, I already stitched her something blue. So I don't know if I want to make it the same color. So I was thinking, what else would this be good? What other color would be good for this? And I had it in my mind as sort of like the purpley blue, purple blue grays of a sky, like a sunrise or sunset. And I thought, let me see if I could find like a purple, like a lavendery kind of color. I think white would still look good with that, and it would still look like a sky. So I found a perfect color actually at Garon. It's Fiber on a Whim. It's called Heather. And I'll show you what I've got going so far. So this is the fabric, and it's showing pretty true to what you're seeing there. It's basically like a lilac, lavendery, pale, like a light purple with a lot of gray modeling in it. And the white stitching is looking pretty okay on it too. So I've just barely put a dent into it. What I'm trying to do is avoid what I did this year, which is I got all the way to basically November when I decided that I wanted to do gift stitching. So now I'm starting now. I hope to chip away at it. And I think I'm still going to have a lot. This is a huge project. So I think I'll have a lot to do still come December, but I won't have like the whole piece to do, which is basically what I had this December. So I love it. I think it's going to be pretty. The white is 3865 DMC. And then I'm actually going to keep the teals that are in all the other motifs, like the reindeer and the trees and everything. I'm still going to make those teal, and that teal will still be a nice, like it'll look pretty on this fabric, I think. So there it is. Started my gift stitching. I hope someone will like it. I'll like it. If no one else likes it, I'll like it. That'll be fun. I cannot wait to get, like, there's a lot of fill-in up top there. Um, but I'm almost, where am I at? I'm like in here, these diamond motifs way at the top, that's where I'm at. So I'm not too far from actually getting to the snowflakes. The other thing with this is that there's tons of beading, which will be my first time with beads. So that is going to be really exciting. I actually can't wait to try that. I mean, I think I'm going to do all the stitching first. Is that what people do with beads? You do all the stitching first, right? And then go through and do the beads? So the beading is in the distant future for me. I just need to get stuff stitched first. Okay, so that was again Falling Snow by Shannon Christine Designs. And that fabric, I think I've been forgetting to give you fabric info. It's an 18 count Ada, Fiber on a Whim Heather is the color. Okay. That'll be a real feat. I already told you in my last video, my whip parade, when I showed you that snowman family that I stitched for my sister, it felt like a real accomplishment, that one. I think this one will be too. It'll be a real feat, I think, if I can pull it off. Okay, I have been totally fascinated with all the temperature stitching that everyone's been doing. I love the concept. I love that it ties something scientific into our stitching. I like the idea that it's sort of like an almanac represented in our stitching. I like all of that. I like the concept. I think there's some beautiful temperature patterns out there like that. Dr. Christie's The Bookcase one is really pretty. I really love the one by Stitchin' Mommy. It's that butterfly one. So many beautiful ones. The only thing is, I'm not really intrigued or enticed by the color palettes on the temperature stitching, like the range of color, the wide range of like basically all the rainbow colors. That doesn't really speak to me. So I've been thinking a lot about it, and I'd been thinking, well, what if, I think the basic concept in the temperature stitching is that you have increments of temperatures, like let's say 5 degrees, 0 to 5 degrees, 5 degrees to 10 degrees, and so on, and each one you assign a color. Well, I was thinking, what if I make all of the colors, what if I use only one color, blue, but I make it all different shades of blue? So, um, that's what I did. I took all my blues. See, I have a stash because last year I had joined the Color and Cotton Thread Club. I love color and cotton threads. And then I stopped. I left the club in December because I had so much accumulated that I wasn't using for anything. And thread clubs, the thing with thread clubs is you're accumulating single skeins of colors, right? So only certain projects require single skeins. Like a lot of things that I do are monochromatic where I need like 5 or 10 skeins of one color. I don't do a lot of stitching where I change a lot of colors. So this project is giving me a chance to just use up colors from my stash. So I picked all the blues out from my Color and Cotton thread clubs. I also had some blues that came. I had ordered that Gilmore Girls box from Black Needle Society last year, and that the threads in that one were Color and Cotton, and they were also blues and like some neutrals. So I picked those blues out too. So these are all the different blues I had. See how many? These were just from my thread clubs and from that box. And then I threw in a DMC, the Caribbean blue, got to use it somewhere. So I've got some dark ones, some light ones. So I just looked at each color and I thought, well, what season do I usually associate these colors with? And I kind of assigned a temperature increment to each one. And I used some of these like kind of icier, cool colors for colder weather, and then these more oceany colors for summer, for warmer temperatures. So I sort of kind of I laid them out and created a gradient that I was comfortable with, and then I started assigning. Oh, Steve's walking around up there. I started assigning some temperature ranges, increments to them. So then, what pattern to do? So the best part of Color and Cotton threads is their variegation. They have a very gentle, subtle variegation that you don't see until you stitch it up. So when I look at, for example, a color like icy gray. When you look at it, you don't really see, like I'm looking at it on the skein right now, I do sense a little bit of variegation, but the real power of these threads is when you stitch them up. You can really see the color changes in them. And a lot of the temperature stitching that's out there, the existing patterns, you're stitching so little that the motifs are not big enough to be able to see color change in them, because I don't think they're not intended for color change. They're intended to be just something quick that you do each day, right? To keep track of the temperature. So I wanted to use motifs that are a little bit more substantial where you could actually see gradient change. So I had picked up January Quaker. This is From the Heart. From the Heart is doing a Quaker series, a monthly Quaker series, and they're really lovely. They're these tiny Quaker patterns. They're just so pretty. Like this motif, this dark motif over here, I think it's just so pretty. They're all really pretty. That wreath. So what I did is I took some of the tiny motifs from here. I took this heart down at the bottom, and then I took the star over here, and I'm just alternating them, and I'm stitching um, one for each day, and I'm using the high temperature for each day and matching it up with whatever like color increments I've set aside. So here's what it looks like so far. Here you go. So this is this very first one here, and then it goes through the 16th on the top row. And then this one down here is supposed to be the 17th, but I made it the wrong color. I checked. What I've been doing is I've been using AccuWeather, but AccuWeather, it's better to check the high temperature once the day has passed to get the official high temperature. And I stitched it too early, so the actual high temperature was something else. So it's inaccurate. I have to take that out. There we go. I want to get close enough for you can kind of see the motifs. So that's all it is. I'm just alternating those two motifs. I'm stitching one for each day. And then I stopped at the 16th because I was trying to decide, do I want to continue, like, do I want to keep it this width and do 2 lines per month, like the 1st through the 16th, and then the second row will be the 17th through the end of the month, and then do the next months and so on. Or I have this is a long piece of fabric. Do I want to do the whole month across? And I think what I'm going to do is the whole month across. So I will continue with the 17th here. So I love it. So when I finish, they're pretty easy motifs to stitch. I usually just stitch, I don't stitch them every day. I'll stitch them chunks at a time. So I'll do a few motifs at a time whenever I have time. So I need to go back now. I haven't done anything since the 17th, basically. So I like it. And I think it's going to look really pretty. Basically, when I finish, it'll just be a, a pretty piece with all different blues on it. I had even thought about maybe variegating from blue to green, but I just had, when I looked at my stash, I said, I've got a million blues. Let me try to do something with these. I have my temperature increments all sorted out through 70 degrees. For 70 degrees and higher, I need to split it up, and I don't have enough color and cottons to do those higher temperatures. So I've been splitting it up in 5-degree increments. I have plenty of blues for everything up to 70 degrees. For 70 degrees, I had this Caribbean blue, the DMC color variations, Caribbean blue, because it's kind of oceany. And then I need to see what else I have. I know I have a Threadworks blue I can use for maybe like 75 to 80 degrees. And then I need to find a couple more. I'll probably just do some like DMC or something. I'll see, whatever I've got, I'll use that. So I haven't broken down the highest temperatures yet. I want to see if I can get in. My close-ups today aren't going to be super because, as usual, my video quality is not great, but here. Now, do you see how there's variegation? Like in the third motif there on the top row? You'd only really see that if you stitched a motif that was large enough, for you to see that color variation. So I love it. Even in that last motif there's a little bit of variegation. So I really enjoy that. It's, yeah, I'm excited to keep that going. And I actually did one more temperature stitch. Do I have it? Yeah, I do have it here. I'll show you that real quick. I have, if you're keeping an eye on the time, I have 1, 2, 3 more pieces to show you in new starts. I know, let's not talk about how I'm still doing new starts. Okay, so actually before I settled on that temperature stitch that I just showed you, what I've been thinking a lot about temperature stitching, and I had thought, wouldn't it be cool to connect like climate change, somehow track something related to climate change through our temperature stitching? You won't believe the amount of stuff I've been reading about ocean temperature. So I thought, maybe I could stitch something related to ocean temperature, because the oceans are warming. So I found some really interesting data from the Ocean and Climate Academy of Sciences. And I had also been reading some articles written by Dr. John Abraham. He's a thermal sciences professor and he writes for The Guardian. And I'm going to link all his articles below because like I said, he's a thermal sciences professor and he has a really good way of explaining ocean science to people like me who are not sciencey people. He draws comparisons and explains it in a way that's really easy for us to understand. So, and he just, I had actually, I'm going to be all over the place again with telling you about this. Okay, so let's start. Let me show you, and then let me walk you through what I did. So I wanted to research ocean temperature, and what I found was that the more interesting data point is something called ocean heat. It's the amount of heat that's trapped in the ocean. So quick version is, all the like greenhouse gases and the CO2 that's in the atmosphere. Well, our oceans actually absorb a lot of that. So like it's something like 93% of the emissions that are out there get absorbed into our oceans. So what that means, it's a lot of CO2 coming into the ocean, and that's what warms up our oceans. And when water gets warm, it expands. So that's what's causing like rising sea levels and stuff like that. It contributes to that. Also, like warming oceans contribute to a lot of things. Like it affects our weather patterns. So like amounts of rainfall and subsequently, flooding, hurricanes, cyclones, tropical storm, like all of that stuff starts at the ocean and has to do with the heat that's trapped in from all the heat emissions that are out there in the air that then get absorbed into the oceans. So the really interesting, so here's what I'm doing. I'm basically stitching waves. And what I did was I used a data point from the Ocean and Climate Academy of Sciences. They have data going back to the 1940s on ocean heat, how much heat is trapped into the ocean. And they have a really excellent graph. I'm going to see if I can put it up here. Basically, what they did is they took the ocean heat data from 2006 to 2015, and they averaged it all together. And they said, let's just get one baseline. Let's use this as our baseline to measure everything else. So they took the average ocean heat from 2006 to 2015. And then they created a graph where they looked at all the data going back to like the 1940s, 50s, 60s, all the way through now. And they compared what was the average ocean heat each month compared to that baseline. So if you look at the data, they say it's more reliable data starting 1960 and beyond, depending on how, like, using, dependent on the tools that they were using to measure ocean heat. But basically, like if you look at the 1960s, and compare it to that baseline, the oceans were much cooler than that baseline. But then as time goes on, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and now it quickly approaches that baseline, and now we're beyond it. So like now we're even warmer. The oceans are much warmer than even that average baseline from 2006 to 2016. So that's what I'm measuring in this piece. That how much basically the difference compared to the baseline and how cool or warm the oceans are. So what I did is I basically used an index card and I drew some lines on it and I thought, well, what could be a motif that looks like a wave? I just made my own wave motifs. And I'm stitching a wave for, how did I do it? I took the data for every year starting in 1960 from that Ocean and Climate Academy of Sciences, and I took the September figures for each year. So the first wave is September 1960, September 1961, September 1962, 63, 64, and I'm doing 8 waves in a row. And it starts, my color palette starts with teal colors, but then slowly transitions to orange the warmer that it gets. So right now, what year am I in? 68 and 876. So I'm approaching the 80s here. So it's still relatively cool, although like this is the coolest. This dark shade has been the coolest. And then these are kind of cool and then slightly less cool. And it's going to transition to orange the warmer it gets. So the way that I determined my colors was I actually just pulled all of my teals and oranges and then I tried to lay them out into a gradient. And the color that helped me the most was this one. It's called Hidden Treasures by Threadworks. And this came in that 1 month. If you've been watching my videos, you know, last year, just for 1 month, I tried a 3 owl threads nest egg for Threadworks, just 1 month. And they were, all the colors were so unexpected and beautiful, and all of them have come in handy at some point. I've tapped into those colors. And I only did it for a month because, you know, you like with the color and cotton threads, you just start accumulating so many threads and I didn't want to keep it going, you know, and keep getting threads that I wasn't sure I was going to use. So this one was in that bunch and it's a beautiful blue transitioning to like a clay color. And so I used that as my inspiration. I said, this is going to be the baseline, basically. My baseline color, when the temperatures start approaching the baseline, I'll use this as the in-between. So passing the baseline will get more orange. So I've got the next color in the range is going to be this DMC 4140. I think it's called like Sand Dune or something. I can't remember. So that's more orange. And then eventually it's going to get to my buddy Desert Sunrise from Threadworks. That's going to be the warmest. So those are the warmest, not warmest, the most ocean heat will be represented by that color. Less ocean heat will be more of the teal shades in this. So I've got Oceana by Color and Cotton, and then that Peacock Feathers by Threadworks. So this is the coolest, no, I'm using the wrong language. The least, least amount of heat compared to the baseline is this darker color, and then it changes to the lighter teals and then the darker. And then I'm going to stitch like a legend and a description of what it is. So I started doing some of that, stitching the title in there. And I'll put like a little key to what each color represents and all that. So basically it'll be an 8x8 grid of waves. So when I get to the bottom, it'll be like this year, and there's enough room to get to 2024. Yeah, I hope I did tried not to get too far into the science of it, because I don't know how interesting you find that. I find it super fascinating. I've been reading so much about ocean heat. Start with the 3R. I'm going to put a section below on if you're interested at all in easy explanations of climate change. Read the articles I put down there by Dr. Abraham. He's actually a very approachable person. I actually emailed him because I had questions about the data because I was following my advice. I have my friend Melanie, who's a writer. She was telling me, I had tea with her back in December, and she was telling me how she reads a lot. She reads all the time, and she reads a lot of stuff that is not like in the mainstream, so stuff that's put out by like university presses and things like that. And she will always reach out to the authors of the books she reads, and they're always very appreciative because basically they're like, "Oh, people never write us back or talk to us about our books." So I had that in mind. So I was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to try email." Like, I found him on Google, Dr. Abraham, and he's a professor in Minnesota. So I just said like, "Hey, if I'm looking at this data and I have questions, I just want to make sure I understand it when I talk to people about it." He's like, "Oh, but he got back like within a day." So the lesson is reach out to the people whose writing you're reading, because they're real people and they answer your questions and they like hearing from you. So yeah, lots of fascinating stuff. I was reading about the devices that they use to measure ocean heat. So they use these devices called Argos, which they put into different spots in the oceans all over the world, and they're programmed to sink to a certain depth because ocean heat, like the deeper you go into the ocean, the less heat is trapped. Like most of the ocean heat is trapped into the top. They say it's like the top 700 meters to 2,000 meters of the ocean has most of the heat trapped into it. So the really, really deep parts of the ocean are still kind of cool. So these Argo devices, they are programmed to kind of poke around down at a certain depth and collect data, temperature data every day, at certain intervals. And then every couple weeks, they're programmed to slowly rise back up through the ocean, and they're continuing to collect data. And when they get to the surface, they send all that data via satellite. And that's how scientists have that data to work with. There's actually, if you want to also read about ocean heat, another really good resource is NASA. So a lot of our ocean heat data comes from NASA because they run a lot of scans from outer space, basically satellite scanning, satellite imagery, like the colors of ocean patterns. That gives away a lot of data too. So it's a super fascinating world, and I've spent a lot of time reading about it. I think now what I want to do, I want to see if I can connect. I have a cousin who's an environmental scientist, and I want to see like the next steps now, or like what can we do? And I think what a lot of like Dr. Abraham, when he was saying in his latest article for The Guardian, he was saying that the individual actions you do for climate are really good in your home, but we're at a stage now where it needs to be like collective change. Like we all need to come together and put pressure on the people who are the worst at putting out emissions, and demand for better actions that are better for our climate. Like these small individual actions are not going to be enough to really make the impact. We have to come together as a culture and demand for change on a larger scale. So I'm going to talk to my cousin about that and see if he has some tips for me on like, I think it's about now it's the stage where we need to advocate for policy, actual, political change and things, movements towards keeping people accountable for their carbon emissions and things like that. So I don't know enough about that side of it yet. I've been reading mostly the science side of it this month, so we'll find out more about that. Okay, I have a couple more things to show you, but I want to grab them real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, Last couple of things I want to show you also in the new starts category. One, I'm so filled with shame when I show you these. I mean, I love them, but I also did not stick to my no new starts until I finish a whip thing. I don't even know what to say about that. I was just feeling festive and I got a pattern that was very festive around the new year and I just said, I'm going to go for it. And it's this one. It's my first Mojo Stitches, Peace and Plenty. Here's what it looks like. It's just so pretty. It's based on a Hungarian cross stitch pattern. I guess that's what like traditional Hungarian motifs look like. And I love that it's red. I had a red that I wanted to just try out. And so here it is. I do really like it and it stitches up quick. Here's what I've got so far. So this is with Silks for You. It's PR 119. And this is from an old grab bag from Color and Cotton. So I don't know what color this is. My ocean temperature one, I think I was doing that in Driftwood. That's also a Color and Cotton. I think that was Driftwood by Color and Cotton. This is some sort of dreamy light gray. I don't know what it is, but it's got like tinges of brown in it too. I genuinely don't know what it is. The grab bag fabrics don't come with names. So anyway, it looks really, really pretty. I like it. Those motifs are really quick and fun to stitch. I'm using 2 strands of PR 119 over one. It's an 18 count Ada. So that was fun. Right around the new year, I was stitching on that. We have a really fun tradition. Well, it's not really a tradition. We've only done it 2 years in a row so far, but it's been really fun. My friend Melanie, who I was telling you about, she and her husband and Steve and I, last year we did it, and this year for New Year's too. We do like an appetizers and trivia night. Not a whole night, just like the early hours of New Year's Eve, because they don't really stay up for New Year's, and we stay up, but we haven't been doing much, especially with pandemic and stuff. We haven't been like going anywhere for New Year's or anything. So that's been really fun. The goal is they do appetizers at their house and we do appetizers here. And then we get on Zoom and we try to stump each other with trivia questions. And then we just kind of chat about, how it is with trivia. It gets you off talking about stuff. And so it's really fun. It's like a nice night of conversation and fun trivia. And we both enjoy trivia. We're both like both couples were both really big Jeopardy fans. So anyway, that's what this piece kind of reminds me of that because I was stitching on it around that time. I had started it around New Year's and New Year's Day. So, Peace and Plenty by Mojo Stitches. Okay, last new start I'm going to show you is one that I'm selling with Kim, who is cataloging my stitches. And we're calling it, what are we calling it, Kim? Hang on a sec. Stitching Fragments 2022. Stitching Fragments 2022. I don't know if we're using a Sal in that hashtag or not. I gotta check. But anyway, we're both stitching different series of Fragments in Time by Summerhouse Stitchworks. I don't remember the year of the one. It's the one that Kim's doing is a shaker. It's all shaker motifs. I want to say it's maybe the 2019 one. I'm doing the 2018 one. And this was one that I had picked up over the summer at my local needle workshop, Inspired Needle, because Nancy, who is one of the gals who works there, she had stitched, I had seen a model that she had stitched that was a tribute to her mom. And it's basically all these different, there's a series of 8 of these. I picked out only a few of them. I don't have all of them. I picked out the ones that I liked. And she had stitched all of them into one piece. It was very, very pretty. And she had stitched her mom's initials in there. So I am doing just 4 of the motifs. And I want to show you the colors on this. They're really pretty. I'm using the called for colors. There are 6, but one of them they didn't have in stock when I kitted it up this summer. So isn't that just lovely? Let me show you this red too. Such a pretty color palette, right? So what are these colors? This is Current, Gentle Art, Current. This one is Mint Julep, Classic Colorworks. This one is Antique Rose, Gentle Art. Even just those 3 colors together, aren't they pretty? Like any combo of these colors would be so nice. what's this one? Toffee. So pretty, pretty like buttery yellow. And then ribbon red. Uh, Toffee is gentle art, and then ribbon red is classic colorworks. So that makes for a pretty palette. And stitched up, I'll just show you. I didn't get very far. I just spent like a weekend afternoon on this. But it's looking nice already. So it's the top board. It's going to be a square, and Summer House Stitchworks on the website, they have a free border that you can use for all of their Fragments in Time series. Each one has its own free border pattern. So that top part is the border. I'll have to do a little bit of, I'll have to think. It's because the border is created for if you're doing 4 motifs on top and then 4 on the bottom, but I'm only doing 2 on top and 2 on the bottom. So I'll have to work with that border a little bit and make sure it all syncs up. And then this is the first square right here. This is as far as it goes. That's the length of this square. So then there will be another square right next to it. So it'll be pretty small. But I like that. I was able to use all the colors except for there's one that it's like a tinsmith or something. I don't remember what that last color was, but I have one color that's missing. It's a gray. It's a dark gray. That's missing. But otherwise, got all those. And it's coming up. I like how it's turning out. Turned out pretty okay. Those colors look nice together. They're really pretty motifs. I didn't bring the other ones. There's a bird in one. There's a tree in one, I think. Each one has just its own little, there's a quilt square in one. They're pretty. They're nice patterns. I think we are getting to the end here. My plans are easy. wipgo. Going to continue with wipgo. My squirrels will be up for wipgo, and then I also have my Huga sampler. I'll see if I can throw in a picture here. So I'll be chipping away at those. I'm going to do the next section of Kain Kapal. I'm going to put a few more stitches into this stitching fragments, and then chip away at my gift stitching, and we will see what else comes along. But keep up with my temperatures too. I got a lot to do in February, and February is a shorter month, so we'll see how it goes. Thank you so much, as usual, for sticking around and just for like being willing to listen to me talk about cross stitch, go on and on about cross stitch and like all the different things that cross stitch has me thinking about. I really appreciate that you're here. If you're new, thanks for staying. If you're not new, thanks for coming back. I'm going to see you in another month, and I'll see you on Instagram too. And I hope you're staying warm and having some good stitching time. And I will catch up with you soon. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Have a good month.